After Zelensky's inspirational speech to Congress, Washington was in awe. Welcome to Eagle News Channel. A powerful speech delivered by the President of Ukraine to a joint session of Congress drew parallels to a speech delivered by Winston Churchill at a previous meeting of Congress. Washington, at the beginning of a powerful and often emotional address that he delivered to members of Congress on Wednesday evening, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said, "It's too much for me." In the speech, he portrayed the struggle of his nation against Russia as an existential and global battle for freedom. The comedian and actor, who had a career in the entertainment industry in the past, skillfully stirred up American patriotism while defending Ukrainian sovereignty. Even though he was demanding more money from the Americans, he expressed gratitude for their generosity. He appeared to be inviting analogies to Winston Churchill, who addressed Congress during the darkest days of World War II in 1941. He pierced through partisan politics with an appeal to shared American and Ukrainian ideals, and he did so while seemingly courting comparisons to Winston Churchill. At the conclusion of the address, both the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, and the outgoing Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, raised a flag of Ukraine that had been offered to them by Zelensky. Soldiers in Bakhmut, a tiny city in eastern Ukraine that is located on the front lines of the struggle against Russia, had just a few days earlier given the very same flag to Zelensky as a gift. Zelensky guaranteed triumph. During the winter of 2016, when Russia was poised to commence its invasion of Ukraine, many observers expected that Russia would win the conflict quickly. However, despite having been strengthened by Western intelligence and material, the Ukrainian resistance demonstrated extraordinary persistence. Now it is Kiev, rather than Moscow, that is publicly talking about having won. In the beginning of his address, Zelensky made what could be interpreted as an appeal to the American preference for rooting for the underdog by saying, "Ukraine didn't fall." The situation in Ukraine is stable and improving. The Russian army is significantly larger than the Ukrainian army, but it is poorly trained, riddled with corruption, and suffers from widespread abuse. For years, the United States has been providing training to Ukrainian military, while anticipating that Russia's takeover of Crimea in 2014 and subsequent incursions into eastern Ukraine would eventually be followed by a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, the fruits of that training, and of a continual flow of weapons from the west to Ukraine, are playing out on the battlefield, with the Kremlin appearing to be flummoxed by an adversary it had imagined it could conquer in a matter of days. Both political parties were able to find reasons to celebrate. It was especially startling to see members of both the Republican and Democratic parties standing up to warmly support the Ukrainian president as he spoke in confident and assertive English on Wednesday night. At a time when political tensions were at their most acrimonious, Zelensky appeared to bring Washington closer together with an appeal that may have had something to offer both conservatives and progressives. The world is too interconnected and interdependent to allow someone to stay aside and at the same time feel safe when such a battle continues. Our two nations are allies in this battle, he said, tying Russia to the anti-democratic movement that has found a foothold in the United States of America and other Western nations. This movement has found a foothold in the United States of America and other Western nations. The statement was certain to strike a chord with Democrats, particularly as a congressional subcommittee prepared to issue its final report on the incident that occurred at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. The uprising was started by supporters of former President Donald Trump, who is widely considered by his opponents as having established a relationship that is far too close with Vladimir Putin. The opposition views this as having been the primary cause of the riot. Zelensky gave a convincing vision of a society prepared to celebrate Christmas amidst the ruins of war to those who adhere to conservative political beliefs. "We are going to have a Christmas party." When Ukraine's first Jewish president made the statement that even if there is no power, the light of our faith in ourselves will not be turned out, members of Congress rose to their feet to give one of numerous standing ovations. References to Franklin Roosevelt, a symbol of the Democratic Party, as well as the Battle of Saratoga, an important victory for the United States during the Revolutionary War, provided rival ideological factions with further reasons to root for Ukraine. Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican Florida, and Rep. Lauren Boebert, Republican Colorado, both staunch Trump supporters and members of the Republican Party, were the two politicians who shown the most open hostility against Zelensky's message. Both of them were observed to be seated and staring at their phones when other members of Congress stood to applaud at one point in the speech. There can be no victory without arms. Zelensky made the same argument as he did earlier in the day in the White House, pleading for more and more powerful weapons to be made available. We are armed with artillery. Yes. I am grateful. We already have it. Is that sufficient? To tell you the truth, not really, he said at one point in a tone that was somewhere between joking and pleading in its earnestness. The Ukrainian people desire an outright triumph, but they believe that this cannot occur without the United States supplying them with more potent weapons, such as long-range missile systems. I assure you that Ukrainian soldiers can perfectly operate American tanks and planes themselves, Zelensky said, in a line that could not have thrilled Pentagon officials who fear that Putin could come to equate American assistance with American involvement, which could potentially lead to a conflict between the two superpowers. I assure you that Ukrainian soldiers can perfectly operate American tanks and planes themselves, Zelensky said. I assure you that Ukrainian soldiers can perfectly operate American tanks and planes themselves, Zelensky. Putting your money in Ukraine is a good idea. In a clear allusion to the fiscal sensitivities of the United States, Zelensky portrayed the billions of dollars that have been spent on military and humanitarian support of Ukraine by the United States as not merely a moral cause, but rather as a savvy investment in democratic governance that was bound to pay off with enhanced American stature and increased international stability. Your contribution does not go to charity. According to what he had to say, it is an investment in the world's security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way. The allusion to responsibility could be interpreted as a veiled admission that he is aware that certain conservative Republicans want to initiate an audit of American aid, which would prove to be an activity that requires a significant amount of time. Zelensky maintained that the United States was only increasing its own security by assisting Ukraine because a victory for Russia would not only further encourage Putin but also possibly provide license to despotic regimes in Beijing, Pyongyang, Tehran, and other places across the world. This struggle will define in what world our children and grandkids will live, and then their children and grandchildren, he said. This struggle will define what world their children and grandchildren will live in. I am grateful to you, America. It is apparent that Zelensky is aware of the fact that the billions of dollars that the United States has contributed to the military effort in Ukraine should have been spent on domestic concerns instead. The argument has been made by certain critics on the extreme right as well as the extreme left. Nevertheless, the party leader's response has been to dismiss these claims. However, the volume of these calls has only increased as we draw closer to the first anniversary of the battle. According to what Zelensky had to say, I hope my words of respect and thanks resound in the hearts of each and every American. In the following weeks and months, the results of his whirlwind tour of Washington will become apparent, and it is almost probable that Congress will find itself debating a fresh package of financial assistance for the military. However, if the reception that Zelensky received on Wednesday evening is any indicator, this was a trip that will undoubtedly pay off for Ukraine, possibly in multiples of the original amount. Support the channel by like and share the video. Don't forget to press the subscribe button and the bell to receive the latest news. Thank you for watching.